We are here and we're going to be sharing some information on GABA and PTSD. Super excited to have Trudy Scott with me. Trudy, it's always fun to have you on.
Thanks.
I love geeking out about the science stuff with you.
I know. And we had such a great interview for the summit. I'm just so excited to share with everyone during the summit. And then today we can share some highlights. So I'm excited to be here. I think it's important that we're talking about some of the neurotransmitters, one of the neurotransmitters that can have a big impact when it comes to PTSD.
Yes. And when we talk about trauma in general and trauma recovery, it's really nice to have tools to share with people so that they know that there's hope, right? Like they know that there is something that they can do, something else that maybe they haven't tried yet, that this is just one more piece that might be part of their puzzle. So yeah, let's talk about this relationship between GABA and PTSD. There's a more recent study that came out, but there was even a study back in 2006 that was sharing on the relationship between GABA and PTSD. And in this study, they looked at people who had been in a motor vehicle accident that was so severe, so significant that they were hospitalized for 3 days. So they had criteria for the event that they had been through, and did it meet the criteria for being something that would be considered traumatic. And then when they were in the hospital, they measured their GABA levels and then measured them 6 months out and 1 year out. And what they found was that there's a strong relationship between the blood levels of GABA and this condition that we call PTSD. And they were able to define an amount of GABA that, hey, above this, people seem to be fine. And below this, people are struggling. And what they found was that there were, of the ones 6 months out that had this lower GABA level, they had all of the criteria for PTSD. There was about 80% of them that met the criteria for PTSD at 6 months out. Then they measured them again at 1 year out. And of those that had met criteria for PTSD with the low GABA, about 75% of them still had low GABA and still were struggling with PTSD. But now also many of them were having symptoms of major depression. Of those at the 1 year mark that had their GABA levels higher, back up into that more normal range, all of their symptoms of PTSD had gone away. So it's this really cool relationship between GABA levels and PTSD that is becoming more known. And one of the things that you really work around with, because you work a lot with anxiety, you work a lot with GABA and being able to actually change some of these levels that might be low. So would love for you to share the more recent study now that came out in 2020, I believe.
Yes, I'll share that 2021 paper in a second, but I just want to tell people what GABA is in case they're hearing this and thinking, wow, this is amazing, but what actually is GABA? So GABA stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. It's a can use as a supplement to raise our GABA level so we can feel calm. So as you just heard from Dr. Amy, in these folks who had this trauma, their GABA levels were lower. But it's all good and well saying, well, our GABA levels are low, what can we do? But there's actually something that we can do. We can actually start to raise our GABA levels, and then we can feel calmer, and it can help some of these symptoms of PTSD and hopefully prevent depression down the road. Exactly. Now, the 2021 paper that I talk about in my interview, it's titled Plasma GABA Levels and Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Symptoms in Trauma-Exposed Women, a Preliminary Report. And they are reiterating basically what this paper that Dr. Amy just mentioned, just saying that GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, and it may play a key role in stress recovery, which, as you say, Dr. Amy, it's so encouraging and hopeful for people who are struggling with some of these symptoms. And they are saying that this dysregulation in GABA may be a neurobiological marker and or potential treatment target for these women. And they talk about two of the types of symptoms that folks with PTSD have, this dysphoria, which is a state of unease or generalized dissatisfaction with life. And then they also mention avoidance cluster behavior. And this is when you've got this emotional numbing, where you feel distant, where you lose interest in activities that you used to enjoy. You don't have these positive feelings. So a lot of these studies that we'll hear about, they're talking about this GABA relationship with trauma and PTSD, but a lot of them are not talking about using GABA as a supplement. So we just need to be aware of that when we're reading the research. But we just know clinically and from other studies that GABA used as an amino acid is very powerful for alleviating some of these symptoms and addressing the low GABA levels and getting them up. There's a little bit of controversy with GABA and the blood-brain barrier, and there'll be people who say, well, how can it possibly work? It doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. But we just know clinically that it does work. There's enough studies now saying that there may be other mechanisms at play, as to how they work. And we know we've got receptors all over the body, and we know that with low GABA, we have this physical tension where we can feel it in our neck, we can feel our these sort of physical, visceral reactions, shaking or tremoring or stiff and tense muscles. And GABA may simply be reacting and supporting that tension that we feel, and thereby making us feel calm. That's just one possible mechanism.
And this is really exciting because, again, not only can it be used as a marker for predicting, like, hey, these are the symptoms that may be coming down the road, but it's also then a tool that we can use to get them off of that path. And we don't need to understand yet all of the reasons for how it works. Is it crossing the blood-brain barrier? Is it working on other receptors? It doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, for me, it really comes down to, does it work or does it not work? And so for so many people, it does work and it makes a big difference. For some people, they don't seem to have as big of a response, and that's fine, right? But for those people who do, what a game changer this can be of really getting them off that track of the mood stuff, the behaviors, everything that can come after some hard life experiences, stressful events, and just chronic experiences that have been stored in our body and causing this biology of trauma that we talk about. So very excited for people to watch your full interview. We go into a lot more detail. There's a lot there. So excited that people who are already registered for the summit can already listen to your interview. Your interview is not one that they have to wait for. They actually can watch it now. So thank you, Trudy. It's always so good to see you, and appreciate the value that you bring to the world and really helping people address anxiety.
Well, thank you. And thanks again for having me on the summit. I'm just so excited to listen to the other experts, to share all of these resources. And I appreciate you and the work that you're doing in this world. I think it's so important. And again, it's great to be here. And thanks everyone for tuning into my interview. And as Dr. Amy says, it's available now. So jump in and listen and have hope and find some tools that you can actually use now to make a